Hello, everybody, and welcome to coverage of the Fall Brawl Top 8. We are in the semifinals. I'm Michael Hoyp. I'm joined in the booth today by none other than Aaron Dix. How's it going, Aaron?
I'm so sorry. We gotta let Danny know we can see his hand when he does that.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that he knows.
Uh,
Sorry, I totally derailed already.
Oh, that's fine. Integrity, it's fine. It's probably likely that Rich is probably saying the same thing, but yeah, if you let him know that angle is probably not very good. Obviously, we're talking about something that's on a different screen that our viewers can't see right now. But we are showing the matchup between Replenish and Mono Blue Stiflenought. So Danny DeRoy is going to be piloting the Replenish list, which is kind of a ironic list that here the Mono Blue Stiflenought list player is none other than Rich Shay. I mean, Danny is a pilot who has been playing Replenish a lot, but obviously in terms of if there's one person that I think of for Replenish, I think Rich Shay is usually that person. So I have a few quick profile things. We'll bring that up for everyone to see. Danny DeRoy out of Eindhoven, the Netherlands. He was 8-0, finished first seed, so he will be on the play for our first game. We are playing a best of 5, and so the first game he will be on the play, and then the second game will be based on who wins the first game, and first 2 games are without sideboard. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Danny is piloting the Replenish deck, as I said.
Yeah.
Likes his matchups against the Rock, Elves, Enchantress, black or mid-range decks, but feels like it could struggle against counter-heavy decks like the Mono Blue Tide or faster combo decks like Blue-Red Devourer. I feel like that kind of fits in the category of Mono Blue Stiflenought counter-heavy decks, and also has Tide in the sideboard. So I think the Dreadnought deck that Rich is piloting kind of hits those notes. So Danny might be in for a tough matchup from his perspective. He did note that Exalted Angel is his sideboard MVP. I think keeping players on their toes can be really advantageous. I know it's in and out of sideboards of the Replenish list. Danny is a fan of it. All right, quick profile for Rich Shay out of Norwood, Massachusetts. He had a 7-1 record for the 4th seed on the Mono Blue Stiflenought list. It is the list from David Raska that was the LobsterCon winning list and also the side event at LobsterCon. So both Brian Selden and then Lanny Huang had played the list. So I guess the new standard of Dreadnought, Mono Blue's back in style, but the Parallax Tide is the big innovation in the sideboard. Yes. Says it's solid versus most forms of combo because you can be disruptive. Again, that's kind of checking the box of what Danny's trying to do with Replenish. Struggles against decks that make it difficult for you to leverage your Xerox engine into a win. And noted as Flash of Insight as the sideboard MVP. All right, I'll bring up the deck lists. We can talk a little bit about what our players have. We kind of already noted a few things, but if I find my scene, then our viewers can see everything. All right. First up, I have the Replenish list for Danny. So I think we have the total number of lands, 25. All right, so I would say that's been like one of the trends. I think standard. In older versions, I think the Replenish list was leaner on lands. I do like the evolution where being able to hit your land drops more consistently. I think it helps in those matchups where you're trying to play multiple spells in one turn. I think that makes a huge difference. I think also a lot of old versions had a lot more City of Traitors, which makes that game plan a lot harder. Obviously, if you play an extra land after that, it goes away. The other note I would say would be the 2 copies of Stifle that are in the main deck. I think that gives Parallax Tide just a little bit more utility on its own, that if you're not comboing out, you can kind of just use it naturally and then have Stifle on the way out. I guess the other thing to note is there are 4 main deck copies of Swords to Plowshares. Is there anything you want to talk about the Replenish list?
No, I think we're looking at a list that's kind of been honed, and the big thing of note you've already covered is the Angels. That's the last thing that the Replenish community seems to be split on.
Yeah, I think there's still like a little bit of toying room. I think Rich's list is a little bit different than this. Though I guess I see a lot. I think Rich has been playing Stifles. I think Rich usually plays less Swords to Plowshares, but I'm not sure what he has in place of those. But I see like the numbers get tweaked and tuned a little bit. Yeah. But I mean, I think the majority of the deck list is pretty consistent from player to player. Yeah.
Yep.
And so we'll pull up the Dreadnought list. And as I did mention, this is the LobsterCon list. And so the biggest innovation is that Parallax Tide in the sideboard. There are Chain of Vapors both in the sideboard, and there's, I think, one in the main. Trying to find it. Oh, there's 2 copies of Chain of Vapor in the main. And so that's, I guess, a difference that's changed. 2 copies of Flash of Insight in the main. I've seen anywhere from 0 to 1 is the standard. I guess 2 kind of gives the deck a little bit more long game. I mean, it seems subtle because it's just like 1 card, but like that card really shines in the late game. One that you get an extra card because if you play it on one half and then the other, you're getting 2 cards. But just the ability, you see a lot of your deck. You have a lot of like control of what you see, and there's been times where you go through the rest of your deck and you get to rearrange it. So super powerful. You can set that up. But anything you want to talk about the mono blue list?
No, I think it's a list that is very well suited to what Rich wants to be doing as a Magic player. I think this is one of the scariest pilots that I can imagine taking this, this deck list on.
Okay.
So, I like that we're seeing kind of a clash of the Titans here. Danny's amazing, great Magic player and plays Replenish very well. And everybody knows Rich Shay is dangerous with anything in his hands. And, I think this really suits him.
All right. I just let the players know that they can begin when they're done. Looks like they're either still shuffling or resolving some mulligans. So
yeah.
I'll bring up my card fetcher. And I guess what are we looking to see in these first few turns? Is there something that will... Is this a game where Rich is going to come out of the gates real quick? Or does he kind of have to make sure that he always has a counterspell available for a card like Replenish?
I think he's going to try to cantrip his hand together early. I think he's going to want to play his early Xerox game, and then by turn 3 have his mana up and be ready to counter his must counters.
Okay.
But it is critical that he gets to play at instant speed more often than the other deck that has to play at sorcery speed. So he gets to play an awful lot of stuff at the end of his opponent's turn.
Yeah, I think then the other big difference is if like both players were considering like a combo deck, like Danny's combo is more likely to just like win on the spot than what Rich is. Like Rich has to like keep a creature in play and then attack twice, where Danny could just have basically an unrecoverable board position from Rich's perspective. All Rich's lands could get exiled, or he would have a card that's like basically untargetable. So
Danny's got 25 lands and can't find one of them.
All right.
He's going looking.
Is there someone that you think? I mean, it sounds like from the players they think that the mono blue Stiflenought list has a little bit of advantage on paper. Is that something you'd agree with? I don't know, like how you've played. Do you play both of these decks? I think you played
both of these decks. I've played a lot of reps with both of these recently, actually.
And so, have you played the Stiflenought list with the Parallax Tide?
From which side? Sorry.
Have you played the mono blue with Parallax Tide?
Yes, I've been playing the Raska deck. I have the. I did make a contribution to get his crib notes.
Okay.
I've been dabbling with that quite a bit. I think it's a very, very good deck, and I like his approach an awful lot. I like the way his mind works.
I'll say there was, I think it was like maybe it was 3 years ago at this point, where like the blue-white standstill deck kind of adopted like the Tide package. Yeah. And now I feel like it's kind of funny that like now the Dreadnought deck is adopting it, and it's just we have cycles of stuff. So
I think there's so much room in the Dreadnought deck. I think one of the strengths of Dreadnought in general is it takes up very little of your deck. You really devote 12 cards to making your deck a Dreadnought deck, so you get to have a game plan outside of Dreadnought pretty easily.
Okay.
So there's Rich going and getting that Portent out of his hand, setting up the top of his deck the way he wants. I think this is exactly what we expected from him.
Yeah, I will say so how many cards does Danny have?
He's happy with the top of his deck.
I say, especially with Danny mulliganing, I think that gives a lot more comfort to Rich, because in certain situations, Rich might be a little bit apprehensive to deploy a quick Dreadnought because of a card like Source of Plowshares, and then he would also have to worry about like Danny comboing out. But if Danny is lower on resources, then Rich might feel that Danny isn't able to do both and is only able to do one, and the one counterspell that Rich might have would be enough.
Yep. Well, neither player has missed a land drop yet going into Rich's turn. All right, so we're on turn 4. Nobody's missed a land drop.
Okay.
Well, that's a pretty big deal, especially when you had so many mulligans from Danny. So.
Rich does add a Mishra's Factory to the board, which he has 2 copies of in his list. So it is potentially something that he might be able to apply a little bit of pressure. It's kind of one of these situations that if both players are just okay with playing draw go and shaping their hand, that just the presence of a Mishra's Factory might change things.
Yeah.
So I think Danny did draw and then pass the turn. So I guess we're at the end step where Rich is going to be playing an Impulse. So something that I've toyed around with, or at least thought of, like there are definitely times in matchups where you don't necessarily need to cast like Impulse on the end of a turn 2. If you know the game's going to go in a longer way, you're going to have a number of turns, and if you have a few more draw steps, like the card that you might have seen and taken with that Impulse at the end of turn 2 might be different than what you would take on turn 4. So you get a little bit more information if you do have that luxury of time.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any more disciplined players in the format. So I think if Rich did that, he's really thinking he's well positioned for doing it. Okay, so intuition here. What do you intuition for from this stage?
So I will say, if I am in Danny's position, and knowing I'm playing against a deck with a bunch of counterspells, usually I would think this intuition would be more to get certain cards in the graveyard rather than like getting 3 copies of a Replenish kind of thing, because it's likely that the card that you get with intuition could get countered because Rich has so much, and if you're taking 2 other copies of that, you're diluting your deck a little bit, which I mean in the short term doesn't make a difference, but if you have the game go 10 more turns, then I think having 2 less copies of a key card like Replenish in your deck does definitely hurt you.
Yes. I think so my only concern with intuition against this deck is you're essentially cutting down the number of must counter spells potentially.
Yeah, so that's kind of looking with I forgot what the theory is. People talk about unlimited, like if you just like lay out your decks, like how do things play out if everyone can like exchange their resources? And yeah, it definitely gives an edge to the Dreadnought deck because there are just less spells that it needs to counter. Yeah. Lineup theory, I think, is what it was.
Okay. I haven't heard the term, but
I think it was applied in a limited concept, which probably makes more sense because I mean in constructed the threats are a lot more powerful in a sense, but
right.
But it could be applied. I mean, also like I would say especially compared to modern Magic, I think Premodern does fit that bill much more. Like you could kind of look at through a really macro lens of what a deck does and how does my deck interact, and kind of like, all right, well, I have Pernicious Steed that will take out your Dreadnoughts or whatever, and then also your Mishra's Factory. So I have the threats covered, but then I have to look at your Stifles and Vision Charms, and so maybe my Duresses and Cabal Therapies. Obviously, I'm using a different deck as an example, but yeah.
So this is super interesting. Sort of thinking through that same line of thinking, he goes and gets the filter land.
Okay.
Just
there was just 3 copies of Skycloud Expanse.
Yeah.
Probably not the most like exciting intuition ever, but
And a second. This is cool.
yeah, this might be Danny just like gearing up for the long game. That he's saying, all
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
I'm going to.
I'm not gonna win this by putting threats in my hands. I'm gonna do this by putting mana in my hand. I'm gonna have to beat you the old fashioned. I'm gonna have to have a war with you at some point. I want to have my resources up.
So the one thing where I guess
also thinning.
yeah. I was gonna say, so the times that I play like the Dreadnought deck, because you are more reactive, there are definitely times where you're like in 7 cards in your hand and you kind of just are going to discard. It's a little bit different with Danny because he has cards that he can much more easily deploy. Like if he just plays any of the enchantments, like that's a threat kind of on its own. I mean, it's not like necessarily like Opalescence on its own is not a game-winning threat, but it means that like a card like Parallax Wave suddenly is like a combo that is nearly a game win in that situation with Opalescence. So
I do love the fact that I said one deck gets to play more instants at instant speed more often, and Danny's got more instants in his graveyard at this point. Okay, Rich counting some resources.
Right, we see a vision charm that is just going for the deck. My guess is this is a situation where Rich has a number of resources, and rather than discard a card, that's what he's doing. Because that certainly is not like free. I mean, because Danny's deck does have the card Replenish in it. So
I've watched Rich play this matchup before, and he knows he only has to, especially game 1 and 2 here. He knows he only has to counter 4 to 8 spells.
I don't know if it's that simplified because I mean, okay, so like I would say there are definitely situations where Parallax Tide is a must counter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Replenish is the card that we think about. So like if that's 8 there, but then also like Opalescence is a card because if you don't counter the Opalescence, then every single enchantment becomes a threat. So I don't think it's as simplified as like only 8 spells matter, but you have agency in terms of like there's like a critical turning point, and you can try and line up and counter all those spells.
And we've seen 2 vision charms so far. So if you get any of the threats with a vision charm, that number gets cut down.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing Rich go to that plan.
And so from those vision charms, Attunement, a land, I think it's another land and a Parallax Tide, and then a Frantic Search, Opalescence, land, and Attunement.
Yeah,
so I would say
Plains and Tomb. So everybody's got lands. What are we going to fight over?
And so I think, like I had talked about the Mishra's Factory on Rich's side earlier, and I think with him not attacking in these situations, he's just saying, I'm not going to provide a target for a Sorts of Plowshares that's likely in your hand and make that a card. I don't want to pick a counter war over this land. And so we'll just keep our cards in our hand for now.
It's more valuable to me as a land anyway.
Right. So I see a Dreadnought in the graveyard. Was that just a... That was just a discard to hand size, right? Oh, was that on a different turn?
I didn't actually see what that got discarded to. It might have been hand size.
Okay.
All right. So we've got our first fight here.
On turn 12. So Parallax Tide, there is 6 mana potentially for Danny, the Ancient Tomb, and 4 other lands.
So did Rich impulse on his turn? I thought it would have been at the end of Danny's. I missed that.
Yeah, it must have been, given that the mana is tapped at this point. I'm trying to think what that means. I guess it could just be Rich is just looking for more lands. I mean, that would be the main reason I think you would.
Yeah,
or if you're trying to,
you top deck an impulse with 7 cards in hand, and you impulse hoping to get something you can play.
I mean, the other sorcery speed cards are Portent and playing a Dreadnought, but I don't think Dreadnought would be, given that he had ones in the graveyard that I mean, we both think he discarded.
I don't think he's going for it.
Yeah.
It resolves?
All right. So I guess so. If there's 5 lands that can get exiled right here, Rich would only have 1 mana.
Float your... Well, you float that mana and you can potentially chain a vapor.
Okay.
That's got to be the plan here.
Yeah, and then even if Danny does have a Stifle, that Rich would have the floating mana to counter it.
To fight over that.
I mean, it's also very likely that Rich could have a copy of Foil in his hand. That even even being tapped out, he'd be able to fight a counter war.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me it's like super counterintuitive to let a Parallax Tide resolve in this spot. But
so float the blue. I mean, I do kind of love sticking it to your opponent, like if you've got the bounce spell. And he's got no target for Chain of Vapor, so I'm betting this feels like a very good spot to Chain of Vapor.
Okay.
And fight over that.
So one at a time, I think the lands are getting exiled. Rich is floating mana in response.
Yep.
It's funny that the Mishra's Factory being here, like, actually could be somewhat relevant. That because here now, assuming that the mana pool empties, Counterspell is not available. But it looks like, I would say, is Dandy using that last counter or no?
Yep.
Okay, he is.
All right. Now move phase and see what Rich does. I assume.
So if... Okay, so that one is exiled. Is there any chance that Rich is not Chain of Vaporing this right now?
0.
Okay. I mean, I will say then... he's hard casting Gush. Okay. Oh. I was to say, even if there's just a Chain of Vapor, I mean, the Parallax Tide would go back to Danny's hand. It could come down on a later turn. So there still, I think, is a blue floating mana. I think that die.
Okay.
So is this a Chain of Vapor that has a foil backup? Or
no.
Nope.
His lands are gone.
Well, so I mean, if Danny has a Seal of Cleansing plus a Stifle, so again it's likely that there's foil in Rich's hand, so that plan probably wouldn't work. And maybe that's what Rich is trying to attempt Danny to do. Four mana, it is a replenish. Okay. So this would be getting back 2 attunements, another Tide, and an Opalescence.
Good value.
From what I could see. Does Rich need to use a foil here? I guess so that the danger... I guess it's not
have one for a potential Stifle.
Well, the thing is, I guess he gets to untap, but he only has 1 blue mana, so the card Counterspell is not live in the situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you got to
Foil, discarding Stifle and an island. The Replenish is countered.
Would have been a fantastic time for Mana Leak.
I don't think. Does Danny have Mana Leak? I don't know if he does.
No, does he not? Okay.
I think that is something that Rich has been playing, and I don't know if Danny does have it.
I love Mana Leak in this deck.
Pulling up the text deck list to check. Yeah, I do not see the Mana Leaks.
Okay, so here we go. We're going to fight over the Stifle, right? What do you got, Rich?
Well, given that Rich didn't play another island, it's got to be foil, right? Oh, there's Daze. So picking up an island, so this is enabling a foil?
Yeah. I'll pay the 1 with my ridiculous amount of mana.
So some of us might say paying 4 mana for foil is the hard way. I would say...
So he did have the Chain of Vapor in hand.
Rich? Okay.
Yeah. So he just chose another line on it, essentially.
Well, the problem from Rich's perspective is you end up just... You get a turn, but then you use a card.
It's a lot of resources.
So. Rich does get his mana back, but now it only has 3 cards in his hand. So how many does Danny have? Do we know?
I think still 5 because he would have drawn from his turn.
So if Danny's able to line up a number of threats in a short amount of time, I think then the advantage goes to him.
Yeah,
just because Rich has used so many resources.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if Danny didn't have that replenish right then, Rich's line looks amazing.
Are we just reordering the graveyard? I think that's what we're doing.
I think probably just making himself aware of what it was, because I don't think it matters a lot in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, only card I can think of would be Phyrexian Furnace, but I don't think that's... No, it's not even in either player's list.
Yeah. So I don't think it matters here. I think it's just more like what you have in your graveyard. What have I gotten rid of now?
Yeah.
You just did a lot of discarding.
So are we... Danny is casting a new Tide, right? Wait, why is there... Well, first I'll update Danny's life total. He's taken some damage from the Ancient Tomb. But so... What did I miss? Why is there so much mana tap for Danny?
Where... because he stifled and then played.
It just seems like there's still one more land tapped, right? Oh, he paid for Daze? Is that the reason why? Yeah, okay. That's what I was forgetting, I think.
That's it.
All right, Rich has Gush, which is his best way of recouping card advantage or card disadvantage from like cards like foil.
Yeah.
So adding some more cards in his hand. The islands, at least one of them might stay in there. just for future foils.
I love watching these two guys play Magic.
So, I mean, I feel like Rich's position is kind of to get back to a point where he has a bunch of cards in his hand and has like shields up. I think that's kind of where his game plan goes. And then I guess what I would say Danny's job is to try and play as many threats in short amount of time as he can.
Yeah. Press the advantage.
Yeah, especially using that Gush in the situation now. Rich is down to, I mean, the 4 mana currently. And so it is not something where it's super trivial for Rich to be like casting cards like Impulse and whatnot and then still having Counterspell available. Right, there's 2 counters left on the Tide. Daniel use another one to get rid of an island. Rich is going to float the mana. I guess, is it 2 or 3 floating mana? It's hard to tell. That die is
4.
Okay.
And lets it drain. Mana pool empties. Second main.
So Danny goes for, I mean, if he has a replenish here, there's still no Parallax Wave, right?
Correct.
There's just multiple tides,
but
Opalescence, and
he'd be
Attunements.
really safe to cast it
Yes.
out of his hand.
Yeah. There's 2 tides that would come, so yeah. Okay. So we see a replenish. Rich does not have a foil. So this is,
resolve.
well, I guess maybe I spoke too soon. It hasn't resolved yet. I mean, the only card Rich could have here right now is foil, right?
Yeah, that's it. He could have, I mean, he's got no islands to return for days, so it's got to be foil.
Yep. All right. So Rich decides to discard island and island to the foil, and that is going to resolve. And the replenish is fought off. So that's 3 replenishes down, right?
Did he just untap his
His exiled ones?
exiled lands? Sweet. Just so you know.
I think that technically is technically they were untapped, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Factories are going to get in now. They're not going to do much else. So Danny down to 13, but
all right. I mean, from here, you gotta love Danny's position. If he has basically anything in his hand.
Yeah, that's the. I mean, it's not a given though. I mean, like.
Right. I mean, he's got his 4 mana laid out here. He's got something. What's he going for?
Frantic Search. I don't know. I think it's 2 white, so maybe this is a wave.
Yep. Still have the white. Yep.
And there's Opalescence, so this is.
So, all right, here we go.
And this is the ability to exile all of Rich's lands. I guess.
But he's going to get them back for a second.
Yeah, they would be untapped. So cards that would come into play would be. Could Stifle, or can you play around Stifle with it? This is one of these things where I just kind of have to like think it out in my mind. So if
get in there for 4. This is where I think like.
Okay, so he's going to exile the Tide with the Parallax Wave.
Yep.
And then he's going to exile the Wave.
Yep.
But if Rich were to have a copy of Stifle, then the
and he's got no counter. Danny has no counter magic in this deck. This is why I love. Can you imagine if he had Mana Leak right now? How good would that feel?
So yeah, because there's nothing Danny can do, right? Because it would just be when this leaves play, return all the cards exiled, and if Rich stifles that, then
Rich with 4 cards in hand. I mean, the likelihood that there's a stifle feels
one is in the
pretty
graveyard,
good.
but
1 is in the graveyard, right?
Yeah.
Oh, pass turn.
Okay.
Fight over it when you've got more mana up.
That makes sense. I guess yeah. All right, Portent on Rich's turn. He's going to look at the top 3.
Cast a Replenish next turn. Make him fight over that first. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, or if he has another wave, that would complicate things, right?
Yes.
So
a ton. But 2 in the yard, 1 in play. The odds of him having another wave feel smaller.
I don't think there is a wave in the yard.
Or, I'm sorry, I meant Tide.
Okay.
Yeah, wave would be very good here.
I think I had said that there were 3 replenishes down. I think one of them in the graveyard is an Opalescence, and there's 2 replenishes.
Yeah, I see a 2 replenish and an Opalescence.
All right, so just with Rich's turn, he gets the islands back, but he's only going to cast that Portent, and then Danny's going to go back to his turn. He's going to attack with the Parallax Wave. For Rich will go down to 12. Well, I guess, yeah, unless he's blocking. And we are going to add another wave.
Yep. Feels good.
We're not tapping the Ancient Tomb right here. So if you were to exile the wave with the Tide, and Rich had Stifle, it just wouldn't come back. I guess, and then does this change anything in regards to Stifle? Or is Danny just looking to attack with
I think you just want to just go for the throat. Yeah. I think you're just going like swing in. Because Rich doesn't have a lot of game against that at this point.
Technically could get rid of 1, but I guess not really, because if you were to block with a Mistress Factory and double pump, then you could just use a fading counter to get rid of him.
I don't know, man. This is just expert magic from Danny. What a way to navigate this.
Yeah, I mean, these Mistress Factories won't even likely get the chance to block.
And if you sink mana into Mistress Factory to make it live here, I just think you feel pretty good about making Rich spend his mana there. Love it. Love this game plan here.
All right, attack for 8 will put Rich down to 4. We have an end of turn opt. I'm trying to think, what cards would Rich be looking for? I mean, if he's able to assemble Dreadnought and Stifle, but it's not any good against the waves. I don't think there's anything Rich can do right now.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those matches where it's really hard to keep track of everybody's graveyard in a webcam game.
Players are doing their best job of laying everything out.
Absolutely. Good on them.
Yeah.
A lot of cards in graveyard. Yeah. Well played, Danny.
I don't even think Rich gets another turn.
No. I think this one's done.
I guess Chain of Vapor would be the only card that would interact because there's a second copy of Chain of Vapor to get rid of the Opalescence. The Vision Charm milling Danny for 4.
I think he's totally fine with that. What do you got? I mean, you can't even really... You can try to get cute with Vision Charm and Stifle the Leaves play triggers, but remember, you can always blink these things. And you do keep them from attacking, but I don't know, right? It doesn't feel great.
What keeps them from attacking? Are you talking from Rich's perspective?
Yeah, if you make them blink the enchantments.
Oh, but I mean, like, what is Rich going to do that's going to make him blink them?
Targeting him with the Vision Charm.
Well, the Vision Charm only phases out artifacts.
I'm sorry, Chain of Vapor.
Okay. All right.
He had just played a Vision Charm, so I had Vision Charm on my mind.
Yeah, I think you would target the Opalescence, and then they're no longer creatures for the combat.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't think it's...
All right, Danny's going to cast a Frantic Search. I mean, I don't know if he needs to, but I guess Chain of Vapor is still maybe a reason to do it.
Yeah, if you could just drop a second Opalescence here.
Discards a Flooded Strand and a Swords of Plowshares. You should get to untap those lands.
Yeah, don't forget that.
I would say Frantic Search is a lot worse if it doesn't have that.
Yeah, no, that card doesn't seem really good if it didn't have the untap attached. Yeah, I think you forgot.
All right, so Rich is going to float 2 blue mana, cast a Gush, and I think it's Chain of Vapor or bust. I mean, if he's activating a Mishra's Factory, we can use a fading counter from the Parallax Wave and deny the ability to block. That's not really a problem from Danny's perspective. All right, we're swordsing. Guess that doesn't change the clock since Rich is at 4. He would go up to at most 8 if he tapped both his lands, but that would be pretty pointless. So I guess you tap, gain 3, go to 7, and hope Danny lets you block. Unless Rich does have a Chain of Vapor. Ooh, sorry. Okay, so
Yeah,
Rich does not find the answer, and then lethal damage from the enchantments comes across, and yeah, very well executed from Danny. Able
Very
to.
well played.
Looks like Rich is going to do a refresh. But yeah, so we're doing best of 5. So this next game will be with the same configuration of decks. Players will not have access to their sideboard. So that aspect doesn't change. So the game plan might be pretty similar for both players. It'll be interesting to see if, with the information of how the players played that game, if they're going to try and do something different.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Super complex lines from these two. And I don't think they're the sort of lines that everybody would have thought of.
Mm-hmm. All right, I have the deck list up for Rich. Yeah, I mean, there's a main deck Misdirection that we didn't really talk about, but I don't think there would have been anything in that game where that would have come into play.
Yeah. I've been dabbling with Misdirection a lot lately, and it often feels terrible.
Oh, really? I would say I had been really impressed with it, especially when you play with in conjunction with Mishra's Factories. It's really nice to redirect like a disenchant effect to your Mishra's Factory and protect your Dreadnought that way.
Yep.
I found a lot of corner cases uses for it. I got to redirect a Fire Blast. I don't know if that was necessary. I think I may have had the game anyways, but
redirect the Fire Blast to the Jackal Pup always feels pretty good, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll bring up Danny's list just for reference, so we have something to look at. Right now, yeah, I think Rich might have stepped away, or I guess I'm not sure exactly. So
yeah.
So looking at Danny, I mean, we never really saw any Seal of Cleansings in that game, and the attunements were never cast. I think they were milled, but most of the other cards came into play. We saw the early intuitions that got lands out.
I don't think you really want attunement here. It doesn't seem as strong when you're trying to go land heavy. You know, you're either trying to get rid of threats or get rid of lands. So
I mean, like
Danny kind of wants it all.
In that game, I think there certainly would have been spots where Danny would have been fine with attunement, given that Rich is unwilling to commit a Dreadnought to the board, that your Swords of Plowshares can be exchanged for different cards. But yeah, in general, I agree that you don't want to be down resources against the permission deck. And your lands also have a lot of value because you're trying to cast multiple spells in one turn.
How many Factor Fictions is Danny running?
He doesn't have any. That was one of the cards that he had mentioned that he kind of wished that he had access to somewhere in the 75. But
super good here too. Like, and this is the hardest deck I've ever seen to split a Factor Fiction against.
Okay. All right. Looks like Rich is back. They're shuffling up for game number 2.
Factor Fiction has been a standout all-star from my testing with Replenish. To the point where I am starting to like it more than Intuition.
Okay. I'm gonna go plug in my lamp real quick so people,
sure,
because I know people came to see me. That's definitely the case. So. All right, did I miss anything exciting?
Nope, a lot of shuffling.
All right.
We're shuffling, more shuffling.
Rich with his trademark 6 piles. And looks like number 1 is going on top. So, do you anticipate that this game will be similar to the one that we saw before, or do you think, like, will Rich have to take a more aggressive line and just try and stick a Dreadnought and try and protect it and hope that works?
I think that Dreadnought becomes even worse after sideboard.
Well, we haven't sideboarded yet, so.
Oh, right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, he might want to stick a Dreadnought. I think Rich is obviously going to do whatever comes naturally to his hand. I think he went in with the idea that he was going to play that pretty close to how it went, but Danny had that line figured out. Bryce, he went for the mill plan in game 1.
Yeah, I mean, it was essentially, I think of, I'm going to try and counter all your relevant spells, and it would be a slow mill. I mean, like, he fired off 2 Vision Charms, but there's no mainnet copy of Brain Freeze. There's no access to it in the sideboard. So yeah,
that is the mill plan from this list. It's what he did that famously in the PSS, and it was very successful there. Basically, introduced a lot of people to that as a strategy in this matchup.
I was gonna say, I mean, I don't know if the Replenish list was significantly different, but it seemed just like there were less threats per se. Like, I don't know if there were less tides, or it seemed easier to do then than now. Like, I mean, like, Danny was able to set up a situation where it just didn't seem like Rich had enough resources to counter all the things that he needed to.
I'm curious to talk about the strategy from Rich's side for game 1, because I thought for sure that he wasn't going to commit to the double foil to get out of that situation. I thought when he had the Chain of Vapor in hand, he must have read something that I didn't.
Well, so if he Chain of Vapors gets his lands back, I mean, he untaps a turn. I mean, he's likely passing the turn, right? And then aren't we in the exact same situation next turn, but he's down a Chain of Vapor?
Yeah, but he's not down 4 cards from foiling.
But, like, Danny's going to do all the same things on the next turn. All right, we do have a end of turn impulse for Rich. So we'll see, like, how many turns players are able to go without missing their land drops again. I think that was kind of a key factor of getting to that mid to late game that we saw from both players. If you're able to if one player is bottlenecked on mana, it's a little bit easier to kind of stick a threat and protect it, because your opponent just can't take as many actions. All right, Rich with another impulse. Rich adds a 4th island, and I would say this could be a turn where maybe you go for a Dreadnought, that if you go Dreadnought Stifle and then have Counterspell back up. But looks like nothing deployed for Rich. And Danny's going to hit a 4th land drop. He's got an Ancient Tomb, and then I think it's an Adarkar Wastes and an island and no plains. Rich will draw and play his 5th land. That, I guess now he could Gush the hard way.
Yeah.
But all right, Danny's going to figure out how he wants to tap so he can cast an Attunement. And then he'll pass the turn with 5 other cards in his hand. The Attunement is just one trigger where it's draw and discard, right? It's not like one trigger is draw and the other one's discard. I'm just thinking of, like, if Stifle came into play, that you could, like, stifle the draw trigger and then they'd still have to discard.
No, just the one. The cost is return it to your hand. The effect is draw and discard.
All right, so Danny has added a Seal of Cleansing to the board, so that is some good insurance against a Resolved Dreadnought. It also interacts well if he has Parallax Tide. Rich is going to add. He's added an island and then a Mishra's Factory. So it looks like we're kind of situating to be in that long game that we saw in game one, and it looks like. I mean, I feel like Danny's going to be able to put himself in a position that he's going to be able to do a similar thing. I mean, like, it's almost easier in this situation because Attunement can draw extra cards. It can filter your thing, and then also Seal of Cleansing just makes that Tide just that much better. That you're able to, if you find the spot to resolve it, you could exile the cards permanently. I mean, Stifle does come into play there, but it is a little bit risky. I guess it's kind of tough for Danny because he just doesn't like have any form of permission or any way of stopping a Stifle from Rich.
Yeah.
So that, like, if you just stifle the Seal of Cleansing trigger, that the Tide stays and then you're gonna get your lands back.
And we see another discarded Dreadnought, so he's signaling he is not going that route.
Okay. I mean, with the Seal Cleansing on the board, that is understandable. But
it's pretty weak from this position, but it's just showing Rich's game plan.
Yeah.
It's the same game plan he was on for game one.
I mean, I think the way that these games have been played, I think is probably an indication that Rich is going to be on the Brain Freeze plan in the sideboard. We do have a Vision Charm. That's going to mill Island, Parallax Wave, Seal Cleansing, and Frantic Search. But Rich has also discarded. He discarded another Dreadnought.
Yep. Yeah, fully invested in the long game mill plan. Really glad we chose 5 games here. We're settling in for a long night with 2 of my favorite Magic players.
Me and Rich. Is that what you're saying? Sorry, Danny.
Sorry, Danny.
All right, we have a Frantic Search being cast by Danny. This is off the Ancient Tomb.
Yeah, not very worried about his life total here. Sitting pretty.
I say if he casts enough of those, he might just be able to get a third spell woven into this turn.
So here's kind of a funny little thing. With Rich having discarded 2 Dreadnoughts, Danny discards 2 swords.
Yeah.
Like, fine, if you're not going to go for it, I'm not going to value these highly. I'm still sitting with a Seal of Cleansing on the board. Feels pretty okay.
Yeah, and worst comes to worst, you still have that Attunement to cash in for some fresh new cards.
Yep. Yeah. Very, very interesting match. Very cerebral magic from both of these guys.
All right. Danny still has a floating mana. He's going to fetch. And
also fantastic island choices from both of these guys.
Both players.
Yep.
I do like the portal lands. Portal Second Age. Those are good ones.
Yep.
Ones I don't see too much.
If you ever catch me playing Dreadnought or Stasis, those are the ones.
Okay. So still has, I think, a floating white mana, and he's going to cast the Parallax Tide. So this is a situation where if Danny goes for like the natural combo, which would be hold priority, exile your lands, and then before those resolve, I'm going to destroy. I guess. Yeah, so then destroy the Parallax Tide. Stifle would always be able to stifle the trigger of Seal Cleansing. And then Rich would lose his 5 lands. But then I guess Stifle could come into play the next turn. So Rich is gotta decide if this is the fight he needs to fight. Whether he is able to let it resolve and then fighting over, I think, the stifle or the trigger, or if you'd rather counter this the natural way. So I think if Danny has priority again, I think that means that it has resolved. Danny's gonna use a fetch land to go get an island. So we go for an Opalescence here. Why is it better to do that before using the Tide? I guess if you don't intend to use the Tide right here. I mean, the other option is since...
Does he have another Opalescence in hand and he's just trying to like chew up resources, play an Opalescence next turn, just keep going for it?
Yeah, that is possible. I would say the other thing, like more short term, is there, but I guess you don't have enough counters. I would say you do have the ability to like untap your lands with Tide if you exile yours, let that ability resolve, and then go for riches and then sacrifice it. But again, that falls into the if the stifle that Rich is likely to have is in hand, that wouldn't work very well. So it looks like Danny's going to be patient with this Parallax Tide, which is counterintuitive in my sense, but I can I mean, I am going to assume that there's a plan for Danny of how he's going to use this Tide. It's not apparent to me right now, but... I guess one of the benefits of that Opalescence is just resolve, then you just have an extra 4/4 on the board, and that might be, I mean, might have been part of the incentive for Danny that he's just able to say, okay, I'm just gonna attack with these creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, both players have a lot of resources, both in terms of mana available and cards in hand. I think Rich has a full 7, and Danny has
6.
Okay.
It's 5 or 6, but I believe it's 6.
So the best cards for Danny here, I mean, the most non-committal is just another Opalescence, I think. Gonna go for a Seal of Cleansing. So what this adds is, if we're still on this like Armageddon plan with the Parallax Tide, now you'd only get 4 lands, but if Stifle is the way to get around it, now with 2 Seal of Cleansings, Rich would have to have 2 Stifles here.
Yeah.
All right, so we're exiling 4 lands in response to the ability. We're going to Seal Cleansing to destroy the Tide. That's in hopes that the lands are going to be gone forever. Rich is going to float 4 mana. We do have a Stifle, but Danny is going to use the second copy of Seal of Cleansing, and Rich has a second Stifle. So Rich is going to get his lands back. So that is an exchange, I think, that was very favorable for Rich, at least in the sense of it was a 3 for 2.
Got it.
And then I guess the biggest concern is we haven't seen any copies of Replenish yet, so that like any Replenish that comes that combo comes back.
Yeah, feels like there's some tension here. Okay, Attunement.
All right, Rich has 5 cards. Danny's going to pick up the Attunement, draw a few 3 cards. Gonna figure out which cards he wants to discard. He's got 3 face down. Potentially the Attunement could be the 4th, but I guess maybe he's looking to cast that again. There's no like real card that he wants to discard in this matchup, just because a lot of times,
right?
It's just nice when we're in this point of the game. It's just easier just to cast them one by one. Exactly. Rather than pitch them in the graveyard and hope that you resolve or replenish.
You're getting rid of resources here. Yeah. Lands are resources, spells are resources. You know, almost every matchup you're happy to discard one or the other.
All right. So Attunement is one of the cards. Source of Plowshares, I think it's Adarkar Wastes, and then a Parallax Wave are the cards selected. Danny's going to go for another Parallax Tide. So if Danny has a Stifle in his hand, then he could potentially keep Rich off of having mana for 2 or so turns. I guess it depends if Rich has more mana from his hand, but all right. Rich gonna Gush. I don't know if this is more an incentive to counter the Parallax Tide with a card like Foil, or if this is kind of just a protection from.
I think it's after it's already hit the table because there's already a counter gone.
Okay. Yeah, with
oof.
Yeah, Danny saw the spot where he's able to cast a Replenish, but Rich has Foil.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a safe spot to do that because there's no island for Daze.
Yep.
There's
you go for it for sure. Still taking care of lands out of his hand. All right.
I don't know how many cards were in Rich's hand after that, but that might have been the only reason that you might want to wait on a card like Replenish, that if you pass the turn and Rich has 9 cards in hand, he has to discard 2 anyways, as compared to if he foils now, then he's already discarded those cards and wouldn't have to discard a hand size. But I don't know the exact card counts. I guess the other factor is if he doesn't have a Stifle, then going to the next turn, then Rich is going to get more mana back. I'm assuming Danny has Stifle, and maybe that's not a fair assumption. All right, we're gonna go to upkeep. Danny lets that lands. Parallax Tide sacrifice, and there is no Stifle, so Rich gets back 4 islands. Danny will add an Attunement, which we talk about resources with Danny. 2 cards in hand. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a lot more sting to that Attunement if you have to activate it here.
I feel like he was really thinking he was going to see something off the last that he didn't see.
Okay.
I think he was going for the throat and didn't come up with something that suited that. Brad, definitely no good guy here. I mean, Rich and Danny, both some of the best guys. But man, these two decks,
Both villains.
both villains. They're definitely playing the role of the villain today, both of these two.
All right, so Danny's kind of spent a few turns where he's not playing threats, so Rich has a little bit more breathing room to maybe kind of regroup and reform his defenses if he needs to.
Yeah.
But I would say that
I've got plenty of lands to start putting the pressure on.
I would say but Rich's game plan of closing out the game, it's not very clear to me. I mean, I would maybe this is a spot where if you're able to resolve a Dreadnought, that
I think
it might go the distance.
It's only because you're at this point actually forcing him into a position where he's got to do something.
Okay. Activation of Attunement. I think it discarded 4 lands. And we'll recast this Attunement.
I think Danny just is out of gas.
Mm-hmm. But I will say, if Rich is unable to assemble Dreadnought plus Stifle / Vision Charm, he's really only able to chip away with the Mishra's Factory. Though I guess Danny is down to 8, so I guess I forgot about all the activations of Ancient
Right,
Tomb earlier.
exactly. Oh,
but a Parallax Wave, if that stays in play, then that keeps him pads his life total for 4 or 5 turns.
Yep. I think you only get on the factory plan there if he's already down on life from 5 activations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if that goal line is
another Vision Charm, get some more lands.
If it's a realistic way to kill him, if they're at 20, it's probably pretty tough to attack 10 times.
I don't think you're going to land another Replenish. Did it get another Replenish in there?
I didn't see.
I didn't see it. It looked like lands. Did he mill it? Okay, wow. That feels big. Thanks, Bryce. I didn't see that one.
All right, the pitched cards. I saw an Intuition. I saw, I think, 2 lands. I didn't see what the other card was.
And he's got it.
But I guess if you're keeping that attunement around, I think it means that you're planning on activating it again. So I don't think Danny is finding the cards that he wants.
Demonic Tutor.
Flash of Insight at this stage of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Rich hasn't been attacking with the Parallax Wave in play since Mishra's Factory would just get exiled.
Yeah.
He's going to... This is playing a new Flash of Insight. This is not a flashbacked one.
I was going to say, you don't tap that many lands.
Yeah. All right, so Rich got to look at 6 cards and pick his favorite of those. I'm not going to say that's the favorite of his, but maybe that's what you try to do. Vision Charm that got a Stifle, 2 Opalescence, and
a wave.
Okay.
Absolutely banger Vision Charm.
I guess Danny should have activated Attunement in response and drawn those 4.
Can you imagine activating Attunement there and getting nothing?
Yeah.
Just knowing. I mean, his deck is looking sparse.
All right. Danny might be asking how many blue cards are in your graveyard, and the answer is a lot.
Yeah. Half my deck. It's kind of a fun question. How many blue cards do you spend on a flash of insight from here if you're rich? I don't think it.
You already have the other one in the graveyard, so yeah. I don't think I would do the full amount. I guess so.
Well, exactly.
It's probably, I guess it depends. If you're looking for one specific card, it needs to be a little bit more. But otherwise, if it's just kind of like a value thing, it could just be 5. And then the second copy could be the one that rearranges your deck at one point. Because that is definitely a powerful option of a flash of insight in a late game that you're able to look at all the cards the remaining in your deck, and then you get to rearrange them. There's not a shuffle clause at the end of that. So something that obviously doesn't always get to come into play if the game doesn't go that long, but it's super powerful if it does.
It's incredible to stack your deck like that. Yeah.
It is also pretty hard to do. I mean, like to try and think like exactly how this is going to play out.
Okay.
And so,
all right, we're gonna fight over it. Let's fight.
Yeah, definitely. Replenish is not a card that Rich is interested in having resolved.
No. And does he have another white mana there? It's hard to see what that shiny land is.
There's an Adarkar Waste on the bottom and 2 Ancient Tombs.
An Adarkar Waste? Oh, no, it's a filter land. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Adarkar Waste in that stack. Yes.
Yeah. So second Replenish. When gets countered.
There's the scoop. Okay, yeah.
Too much for Danny. Used too many resources. Rich is able to kind of execute that gameplay that we talk about of just fighting all the important cards.
Yeah.
And then was able to outlast Danny in that spot. So we're tied at 1 game apiece for players.
Mm-hmm.
Now that means that sideboarding comes into play. So let's jump over to this is the deck lists of our players. I have Danny DeRoy's deck list up. So the sideboard is 4 Exalted Angel, 4 Orim's Chant, 4 Chill, Powder Keg, and 2 Tsabo's Web. So I don't know if Exalted Angel is something that he's interested in bringing in. I mean, the way those games played out.
I'm certainly more interested in it than I am with Attunement from here.
Okay. I would say certainly the way that those games played out, that it is just another card that Rich has to worry about. And if Rich is, I'll say, unable or unwilling to put down a Dreadnought early, then cards like Exalted Angel and like that game plan of Danny of just overloading on threats comes into play. If Rich is going to try and get super aggressive and jam and protect a Dreadnought, then a card like Exalted Angel is a lot less impressive. But the way we had seen those games played out, Exalted Angel could be an option. And then Orim's Chant obviously is a fantastic card in this matchup. It is kind of everything you want to see. Like it is a good proactive measure, like a test spell here. It is a card that you can play in response to a Dreadnought. And so if that resolves, then Stifle and Vision Charmer are not an option and the Dreadnought would die. And so
it's so good in this matchup.
So you are not interested in Attunement. What about a card like Swords to Plowshares? Is that a card that's a necessary evil?
I think it's a necessary evil just knowing the Dreadnought. I mean, before I take a look at Rich's sideboard, because if I'm Danny with open deck lists here, I'm looking at Rich's sideboard and seeing what I think he's bringing in too. Because if he's fully off of the Dreadnought plan, even after sideboard, I think you could take him out.
Say I might take out. I would cut Intuitions first. I guess I don't mind like going for the lands, but it's just tough to get any spell because it just makes your deck work. Also, like Frantic Search is a card that I don't know is necessary, but then like Attunement, like some number of those cards, and then I would also be willing to cut some number of Swords to Plowshares. So you already have Seal of Cleansings, and like Parallax Wave is an answer. It's clunky, but it's still like if you get to that midpoint, it's still a threat. So I think I would be interested in bringing in the Exalted Angels and the Orim's Chant. I mean, you could make an argument for, Powder Keg or even Tsabo's Web. Just like eliminating that card of like Mishra's Factory of coming over and over and over. It replaces itself, so it's low opportunity cost. So we could see a lot of sideboard cards coming in for Danny.
I've been really happy playing against blue decks with Replenish to take out my dig that is card neutral.
Okay. All right, so looking at the sideboard for Rich, Brain Freeze, Misdirection, Flash of Insight, Powder Keg, Chain of Vapor, 3 Parallax Tide, 2 Hydroblast, 2 Red Elemental Blast, 3 Annul.
Annul feels amazing.
Annul, and then I think you're bringing in the Tides here. Tide and Chain of Vapor.
And Brain Freeze.
Yeah, and a Brain Freeze.
I think you just take out, let's see, you can take out Dreadnought.
You could leave in a copy or two of Dreadnought. I've seen that a lot. That first of all, you don't want 4 because we see times where Rich has to go to discard, and having more copies of Dreadnought make it a lot more likely that you have to do that. Just discard a card at end of turn to hand size. I could see just leaving in a few that there are times where you could try and win a game really quick. At the end of that game,
keeping your support cards in. Yeah. So I think Stifle's still incredible here. Mm-hmm. Vision Charm is still good enough if you're going for this mill plan, especially if you're bringing in the Brain Freeze. You can mill. Feels pretty all right.
Yeah, I could see cutting cards like the portents that are sorcery speed are a little bit slower, or some number
Daze,
or a copy or two of foil that there's just you're not able to foil that many times in a game, even if it does go long, because you have to keep a certain number of cards in your hand, and discarding 3 cards to counter one spell is rough.
Yep.
So.
I pulled potentially a foil, both Daze, and some amount of Dreadnoughts for Annul, Tide, and Brain Freeze here.
Okay.
Also, Misdirection cute, but I don't know. I'm sort of down on that card after playing this, thinking it was going to be better. I just wind up with the wrong targets.
I think the highest leverage play, you can misdirect an Orim's Chant, right?
Yeah. Target player,
yeah.
Yep.
That is something that could come up. I guess there's not too many other things that you could do. Let me see. Yeah. I don't mind having 1, but obviously that's not a card that you're going to be able to leverage very easily.
Right.
I'm going to jump on the match, and I'm going to grab quick something to drink.
I'm going to do the same. I'll be right back.
All right. All right, so those who are watching, who are we rooting for in this game 3? And I'll say, does Rich bring in the Brain Freeze plan? That's what I want to know. So we have someone cheering for the deck of Replenish, but cheering for Rich as a person. I mean, you should have watched a different tournament. That would have been perfect for you, because Rich is usually playing Replenish. So just rooting for good games. All right, that's fair. All right. Aaron has returned.
I have.
You have a wonderful beverage.
Yeah. Well, my wonderful wife had already brought me a beverage, but I definitely needed a bio break there.
Okay.
I just sat down with Lanny to record a quick podcast, and I've been drinking coffee until noon and then switched to drinking cider and whiskey, and I've been sitting at my computer doing magic content and like, oh yeah, this is a thing that also humans need to do.
So now that we have sideboards coming into play, can either of the decks become a good guy? I feel like if Danny tries to win with an Exalted Angel, he has to be considered the good guy then, right?
So honestly, I feel like I kind of root for whoever's playing from the back foot.
Okay.
I think Danny has a lot more that he needs to do to win this matchup. So I kind of root for whoever has to do more. And that game 1 was epic.
I mean, I agree. I root for the underdog, but I almost feel like Danny has to do less. Like, especially if he ends up bringing like a card like Exalted Angel, like that's just like another card that, like, if it resolves, like that just might win him the game. And Rich's cards are so reactive. Like his only proactive thing to do is put a Dreadnought into play, but other than that, it's like a bunch of counter spells and bounce spells. And I mean, I guess the Tide plan is somewhat proactive. So it almost feels like it's in some ways a little bit easier for Danny just to assemble. Let me just sneak in a 3-mana play, and then you either have to counter that, remove my lands, or bounce it, or this 4/5 will flip and kill you pretty quickly.
Right.
All right. I think Danny is keeping a full 7.
Oh, good for him. Finally gets to keep a full 7. Yeah. Some Netherlands love for Danny here. And also, I just saw Anton's message. Hello, Anton.
All right, we'll kick things off. Danny's gonna start with, I think it's a Skycloud Expanse. I was
gonna say start off with the filter land.
Yeah. Yep, and then on turn 2, he'll run out the Seal of Cleansing, and Rich will just be adding lands as he's done every game so far. And we'll see if a morph creature is in the future. I guess I was talking about turn 3 as the morph turn, but Ancient Tomb could have done that on turn 2.
Okay, no, we're seeing
Attunement.
So some amount of attunement still in.
Mm-hmm.
Additional Dutch love for Danny?
Neighbor and friend. I don't know how local that means. Like if it's neighbor in a literal sense, or if it's
like,
just
are you my neighbor? One state over.
Yeah.
Oh, 20. Okay, that's legit, neighbor.
20 meters is pretty close.
You are not 20 meters from me.
Yeah. At first, I thought it was like a typo, and I thought he meant kilometers, and even then, that still is probably pretty close to neighbors. And
supporting my biological twin,
my conjoined twin.
I'm actually spectating from next to him.
Yeah. All right, so Parallax Tide is going to get attempted from Danny, but Counterspell is at the ready for Rich.
Yeah. Yep. Rich has been fairly passive when it comes to fighting over stuff that I thought might be. That's interesting. I did not expect Tsabo's Web.
Yeah, I think it's just more of the thought of it. It's just really
just a cycle.
Yeah, I mean it does a little bit. Like it kind of shuts down the plan of Rich trying to clock with a Mishra's Factory. But I mean, if the games go like they did in the other, it's really easy to fit 2 mana in at some point. So
suddenly, Danny just looks like a beatdown deck.
Well, the Tsabo's Web's still an artifact. That one's not a creature, but
I don't know. Swing for 5.
Yeah,
we got a clock, ladies and gentlemen.
I guess that is one of the things we talked about, attunement and the card disadvantage. But one of the upsides here is it's just a body. Yeah, it is a body when Opalescence is in play, and I mean like it adds up. Like I guess the difference of like attacking for 2 and attacking for 5 is a huge difference in this position. So.
Getcha.
Right. 5 life points.
Notably, Rich still winning the race here.
Yeah, the Ancient Human's done a lot of damage to Danny.
In a match where life totals don't typically come into play as much as in other matches.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, like the versions of Dreadnought with the Mishra's Factory life total becomes a lot more...
Slightly more relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise, like 13 and 1 and then maybe 25 are the important life totals. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Rich is kind of on the back foot here. Rich got to do a little something.
Yeah. That was just the first attack. There hasn't been a second one, right?
I think we're looking at the second.
Well, no, because Danny tapped 2 for the Tsabo's Web and then played the Opalescence on that turn.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
So, Tide.
Okay, so that was a main phase Gush.
Yeah, I was thinking. I mean, Gush is almost always main phase, but
that's true. Well, I mean, I guess in response to people's activations of Tides is probably the only.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. What do you got for this, Danny?
I mean, I will also note the Tide is a 4/4, so it not only does it get rid of lands for Danny, but
it provides
a blocker for Rich. But I mean, that Seal of Cleansing could be activated at any point and demand that Rich have a Stifle.
Yep.
Which, I mean, could... feels like it's likely.
Okay. Get rid of your lands. Stifle the Leaves play. How dare you tap out against me? Never do that again, foolish mortal.
In Danny's defense,
Sorry,
there's not much he could have done with open mana. I guess if he had Orim Chant, then maybe, but... all right. Now this allows Danny to attack, given that the enchantment is gone. And he's able to add an Adarkar Wastes. But the Opalescence... Oh, I guess I reduced the life total too quickly.
What did he...
Chain of Vapor bounced the
What did he
Opalescence.
chain? Oh.
So now we had tapped enchantments that were not creatures.
Yeah. I mean, you can at least get lands back in your hand with Attunement here. You can use Attunement to recover.
But I mean, given that it was Chain of Vapor, that Parallax Tide looks like Rich had lost connection.
Uh-oh.
Looks like same thing happened to Danny, so it might have been something on my end.
Oh, okay.
Just a refresh, guys.
Yep.
I muted them right away, so I couldn't hear them.
Yep.
Sorry, but
they said it was images were freezing, so they were
okay.
They were both refreshing.
Right. I think it's always funny when it's like on my end, I didn't notice anything happening, but like it's freezing on their end, and I don't know. I guess that's possible, but
Packet loss is packet loss. Who knows?
All right, so Danny's trying to rebuild with lands, but Rich is kind of in the driver's seat here. That plenty of mana still has a Parallax Tide in his hand, so if he's able to find another Chain of Vapor, he can kind of do the same thing again, or just actually doesn't necessarily need just a Chain of Vapor. Could just have a Stifle.
Magic is funny, man. Weird stuff happens. I love this game. Premodern especially. You see some bizarre game states. Okay, 4 mana from Danny. We're back in the driver's seat.
Okay.
Put Rich on the defensive, make him reactive. Who is the beatdown? Danny is.
I will agree there.
It's interesting how relevant that remains after all this time.
Oh, the article.
Yeah.
All right. I can kind of see Danny's hand, so I don't know if... Also, probably means that Rich could see it, but...
I'll message him.
All right.
I think he's... what are we resolving right now? I think he laid it all...
Are those the exiled lands?
Recently.
Those are the exiled lands. Okay, never mind. He's his hand's face down. Yeah, all right, never mind.
Yeah.
All right. A Vision Charm on the mill mode is going to put 2 Replenish, a Parallax Tide, and I think a land. I think Danny...
Feels really good.
Just given his hands, I don't think he was very happy about that.
Yeah. cycle.
As a Tsabo's Web.
These guys are so fun to watch.
Yeah. In some ways, it just things feel so hopeless for Danny. Given I just know that there's another, or that Parallax Tide is just hanging out in Rich's hand, and it's like there's going to be a point where he's like worked so hard to rebuild up his mana, and if he isn't able to kind of
just drops it,
yeah, if Danny isn't able to like find that pretty short window of playing and resolving a spell, which is obviously not trivial against Rich's deck. That a Tide is just going to come and sweep away all his lands again.
So this is why I feel like the innovation of mana leak in this deck becomes so critical. Is you just have to have some sort of a thing to keep him guessing. You have to have some interaction.
What was that?
From the Replenish side, I think mana leak has become so relevant, and it's become some sort of counter magic or disruption has to be played in this deck just to keep everybody fair.
Yeah, it's certainly in like the top 8, like where people know the deck list too. Like having to respect a mana leak would definitely like change how Rich would have to play like almost every single turn.
Exactly. Just to have something that is scary. You gonna pay the one?
I mean, Orim's Chant does a decent job of that in the post-board games, but a mana leak is a very solid like it.
Welcome to our oh, that's amazing. Dazed, make you pay the one, fetch in response to pay the one, stifle your fetch.
Okay.
Oh, that's gross, Rich. That's that feels so bad. Okay, so remember when we talked about who's the hero? Danny just became the hero. After that play, if you're not rooting for Danny, you're doing it wrong. Ouch. It's hilarious because Rich is the nicest guy in the world, but that was a dirtbag move. Julio, his game plan so far has been to mill out, counter the must counters, and mill his opponent out with Vision Charm at the very least. I don't know if he brought in Brain Freeze. But we won't know until after this if he brought in Brain Freeze. He does have access to one Brain Freeze out of the sideboard.
All right, so Rich still has, I think Portent was one of the cards I thought maybe would come out in the post-board games, but we see Portent on his turn. He keeps the 3 cards, and then we'll draw a card on Danny's upkeep.
My thinking is that Rich probably brought in a Brain Freeze. It's a very low cost to have a game plan that also takes away some of your must counters. Mm-hmm. The mill plan seems really safe when you're talking about only having to counter a certain number of things.
All right, so Danny's going to attempt to cast an Opalescence. He's going to take...
We're going to have to fight over that.
I think he had to take 3 damage to cast that. He's now at 9. Rich is going to have 4 mana to cast the foil. Still has 3 mana available on this turn.
Honestly, having the counter magic would knowing your opponent doesn't have any feels really good. I mean, Rich has to really be enjoying being totally in the driver's seat when it comes to the instant battles.
Sure. Like at this point, Rich is just a control deck, and
100%. He's gonna mill you out eventually.
Has a very good grasp on where the game's at, and has a lot of control. the blue deck is doing what it wants. It's filtering its card draw. I mean, at some point we'll see a card like Flash of Insight, and that will give him access to a lot of the cards in his deck. That if he's missing a piece, he can find it. But starting to have most of the angles of attack that Danny was able to present covered.
So Danny kept in all the attunements because he just attunement discarding 3 attunements.
Okay.
Morph. Okay. That feels great here. Finally something. Like finally a threat.
I will say if Danny is able to if Rich is okay. I would say if Rich had the Parallax Tide and a Chain of Vapor, then the Exalted Angel would also I guess it would stay in play. But it would be a matter of time before Danny had the mana to flip it. Exalted Angel responded with Counterspell, so
yep.
I mean, from Danny's perspective, it doesn't feel that bad. I mean, you got another counter out.
Make him answer stuff. From Danny's perspective, he's more threat dense after sideboard.
Well, no, we have gone through a chunk, and Danny has not cast an Orim's Chant.
Surprising, right?
Yeah.
I guess it totally depends on what he thinks his game plan is, because
I mean, he also could just not have drawn them.
Fair. 4 mana. Replenish here? Opalescence here. Okay. What do you got for that, Rich?
So chat is at, can we just get to the point in meta where we can just jam Replenish and Dreadnought together? I will say the Greater Good deck has both copies of Dreadnought and Replenish. But
gross. How do you feel about Greater Good these days?
It's probably not the best with a bunch of Stifles and Seal Cleansings running around, but
a lot of Stifles and stuff.
It's been a while since I sleeved it up or seen it, but I don't know. I'll tell you, it's fun. It's fun to go off of that deck. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have drawn 12 cards at a time, but it
feels real good.
It's pretty fun. All right, so that
looked like an angry play, getting rid of that one, and then
the foil gets it
down.
All right, but we have Replenish.
Do something. What do you got? Down to 5 life too.
I'll update that. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. It's kind of unfortunate for Danny that he hasn't seen one of those Orim's Chants, because this would have been a perfect turn just to slide in that Orim's Chant and then make Rich have another counterspell.
Do something about this. All right, now do something about this.
So if Rich has to think about things, could be Impulse, Flash of Insight, or deciding between a foil and a counterspell. I feel like those are most of the decision points.
Flash for 2.
Flash for 2, but then he's flashing it back.
Oh! So flash for 0.
Yeah.
Flash back.
So he didn't even have the luxury to get one more card, and I think it's so that he can find a counterspell here with this Flash of Insight. So I think that is a sign that Rich's hand is low on counterspells.
Yeah, resources are getting low.
Yeah. Though, I mean, he still's got 5 cards in hand, right? All right, so I didn't see exactly how many cards he exiled. I mean, I think it was the full amount that he had.
It's a lot.
And I mean, it's not an immediate thing. We got Danny with his hands together as he's saying, "Please,
please." Casting his hex here too. Like, it's good. What do you got? He's got the counterspell.
Okay.
All right.
So Danny passes that turn. Rich has an opt immediately to the bottom, and then passes it, and then draws the card, and gonna opt again. So
I hate all these cards. Get rid of all these cards.
I mean, okay. So he keeps that one. There's 5 mana. I mean, the only thing the silver lining from Danny's perspective is that if he has another Haymaker, which looks like he doesn't, it would not be a bad time to cast it. I will say, so one of the advantages of still keeping the cards of like the opts and the portents of it makes your Flash of Insights a lot better. And we see the front half of a Flash of Insight going. This one is for 3. And Danny's going to resort his lands, and
These make colorless. These make blue.
All right, the time for the Tide to return has come. 4 mana tap.
I mean, the discipline from Rich.
Oh yeah. I mean, we did see him use a Stifle earlier with that interaction with the fetch land in the Daze.
Yep.
But yet the Chain of Vapors there. So
Oh.
5 lands get exiled. You are left with colorless. We can still cast a face down Exalted Angel.
I love that one of them is a City of Traitors.
City of Traitors,
well.
yeah.
Like, just backbreaking.
Come on. Oh, morph.
Yeah, but no white mana.
You can just start with a 2/2. Just get in there a few times.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
All right, 4 mana up. 4 usable mana of any color you want.
I'll say that Ancient Tube is usable now. It has a limited number of uses, which is probably
Definitely.
2.
2. Yeah. I mean, unless you connect with that angel.
Yeah.
Play angel, morph angel, and pray it connects. Tide, replenish. What do we got?
Opalescence.
Can I please have a 2/2, sir? Forgone, I think there's so many ways to play around it. I think that's why it stays in the meta. You know, we're not seeing it dominate the meta still. This is not the days where we had one oppressive deck holding everything else down. There's so many ways to combat a 4 mana enchantment. Yeah.
This is Opalescence still on the stack. Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay. As Danny spins it around.
Yep. Praying to the magic gods again. Come on, let me have it. It's just a 2/2.
I say if this resolves, I mean,
What can go wrong? All I've got is the Sealed Cleansing. You've got a 4/4. Let me have it. I was just the table talk has to be fantastic. Why is he?
right? Attack for
He
2.
attacked in.
The
Why
tide.
did he
The
attack
tide was
in?
bounced. That's in his hand.
Oh,
yeah. I
Okay,
guess-
sorry. That's right.
All right. We're just gonna start by gushing, floating 2 mana, returning 2 islands.
I don't think any Ponza deck is keeping keeping down a Tide deck. I think Tide solidly outclasses Ponza in that matchup. It's almost unplayable. I genuinely, I think this is a fair deck that a lot of people get to have game against. Also, this is probably not the point to talk about ban discussions. These guys are playing for a spot in the finals, right? So
Yeah.
and we're seeing some fantastic Magic played by 2 very good players. So I'd like to focus on that if we could.
So, I mean, if everything stands, then every enchantment that Danny has kind of is an add threat. Though it's difficult to cast all his cards because Ancient Tomb.
Right. He gets to tap that once more.
Yeah, but also, I mean, Rich has, like, in an emergency, he's able to play Parallax Tide as a 4/4 blocker.
You can't stifle. No, so it's not a sacrifice, it's a leaves play. So you can stifle the leaves play trigger so that they don't get their lands back. You cannot stifle the sacrifice because there is no sacrifice.
I mean, there's no sacrifice trigger, is what you're
Right,
saying.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. That part's not a trigger. Oh, am I wrong, Mike? Does it work that way? Can you stifle?
So
Yeah.
no, I think the rules of fading of are like remove a fading from the counter from the beginning of your upkeep, or
so you could.
I mean, you could stifle that.
Yeah,
that
okay.
like the during the upkeep that it wouldn't see it. So
Wow.
I didn't see what the resolution of that.
I actually don't know who won.
I was reading Parallax Wave. What?
I'm so sorry, Chad. I missed that one entirely.
I mean, I didn't see a brain freeze. I didn't see. We need to ask our players.
Okay. Sorry, I learned something new today. That's interesting. I have asked the players who quote, who the fuck won that?
I guess
Rich won that.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say we just need to make sure that.
Okay, so there was a brain freeze. That's what it was.
Okay.
I did not see the brain freeze. I was too interested in learning a new thing.
Yeah, I didn't see it either. I would say I saw the flash of insight exiled, but
yeah. Okay, so Rich did bring in the brain freeze. That is the plan.
Okay.
It already fit his plan to begin with. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the deck list again. Since we did see a number of cards. I mean, we still saw attunements. I mean, I don't think I saw any Swords of Plowshares discarded in that game, but
no.
It could be interesting if Rich is saying
is willing to like at least pretend to board.
Yeah, or just like I mean, like if you have the inclination that your opponent doesn't have any sorts of Plowshares, that might be enough to say, all right, this Dreadnought plan is something that maybe I can do
I'm
and
gonna
protect.
jam.
But
both players are just shuffling up.
Yeah.
We're just gonna play the same match we just played.
Yeah, but we saw Exalted Angel, we saw Tsabo's Webs, we saw both copies. We didn't see any Orim's Chant, though I have to assume, I mean, this is probably the best matchup for him. But the cards that we didn't see, I don't think we saw Intuition and Frantic Search or Stifles.
Yeah.
Or Swords. So I think those are probably the cards that I think that Danny's taking out. I mean, basically, I guess not the attunements is what we're
I was going to say, why keep in the attunements if you're going to take out Frantic Search?
Well, one, it digs deeper. I mean, it's one card.
Yes. Yep.
Two, it works better with Replenish and Opalescence.
Okay.
So if you're like
and
having to do
body.
like
I get it. Okay.
Having to do a value Replenish where you do it. Also, and then I guess I'll say the third argument is like if you're stringing together, like if you're, I don't know if that's a good argument. I would say like if each individual threat is like enough of like just overloading on threats, then the card disadvantage maybe is less important, and it's just more important to find a threat. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if that holds true, but
I get it's a body.
Yeah.
I'm into just having a thing to put a clock on him, not letting Rich is fully the control deck here.
Yeah, and so from Rich, we did see the Tides, the Chain of Vapor, the brain freeze. We didn't see any annuls. Is that correct?
I didn't see any.
But and then the things that we saw still in, we did still see some number of portents and some number of
and
pops.
We saw Daze.
So it could just be all the dreadnoughts.
Yeah, I think surprisingly we saw Daze against a 25 land deck. If I were Rich, those Dazes would be gone.
I mean, the biggest upside to like an ineffective Daze is it always like works well with foil, is that you can always pick up an island. But I don't know if that's enough to, especially like when you just are able to exchange it for cards like a null. But I mean,
yeah.
If you're worried about cards like Orim's Chant, Exalted Angel, and Replenish, a null doesn't fight any of those. I mean,
true.
So maybe a null is a little bit less effective than maybe
Orim's Chance.
Yeah, but I think that's just, I think that's random.
It's gotta be that
I would be very surprised if Danny isn't able to fit those Orim's Chants in his sideboard games. Like
he's playing Orim's Chance. He's got to be.
All right. So who do you like in this next game?
I mean, I never like to bet against either of these guys.
I mean, like, it just felt like, I mean, I don't think players made mistakes, but it felt like Danny easily could have won that game if things were slightly different. I mean, it's harder to say because like we don't get to see Rich's hand. Like maybe Rich felt in control the entire time.
I love that Danny came into this with a game plan. Okay. He absolutely has a thing he's doing. It's really wonderful to watch a match where his deck would normally be at a solid disadvantage. Danny came in saying he's going to fight on a certain axis. This has been really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely really good. I assume one of the players is on a break.
Must be. I think Rich has stepped away from the table.
How often when you play long matches of Magic, especially like on webcam, do you like just get up to just like clear your mind or like stretch, or are you able to just go?
I'm a unique case, but if I'm getting up from the table, it's to go ahead and grab a drink or use the restroom. I don't know. There's no stakes in this. Both of these players really want to win, but I mean, this is fun Magic sitting across from a friend, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that either of these two need to shake it off at all.
Yeah, I almost feel like as soon as I stop playing Magic, it's harder to like get back in the mind. Like I know, like if I'm at a tournament and like I'm either. All right, we'll see.
I like that your dog has like a little perch there. Like check it out the window. How dare you, whatever is walking outside of my house right now?
All right. Well, hopefully she doesn't come right next to me and bark again. So apologies for everyone. But yeah, so I think it's like a whatever the piece of furniture was, something like from Megan's great aunt or something, or whatever, like grandma or something. And as soon as we got it, like the dog immediately like just like jumps up on it and looks out the window. So it's all
spot.
scratched on top. I'm like, well, what do you expect? Well, we have a dog. I don't know. Like, I mean, there's even a laptop there that's like the dog still goes up. So I used to have a bunch of crap on there, and then she wouldn't go up there. But yeah, she's back to if a dog walks by, she'll bark.
Okay.
I guess I don't know. I need to make sure I have a limiter on my microphone so that it doesn't go past a certain volume. That was definitely one of the cases where okay.
Definitely had a little bit of clipping there.
I think one of the last casts I did, my dog was barking and I didn't mute it in time, and then Jay's dog started barking, and just a chain reaction. I hate chat saying that her cat just fled the room. Poor cat's like, we don't even have a dog in the house, and I'm getting attacked, getting ambushed.
Where the heck?
Yeah, rip to all the headphone users.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was saying. I think I was talking about getting like back in the zone. Like if I'm at like a tournament, like in between rounds or after I played, I'm like, people are like, oh, do you want to play games of Magic, like just casual games? I'm like, no. I just like, I was like, I feel like it's really hard to like get out of that mindset of I'm either playing like competitive Magic or not, and it's hard to like bounce between, especially at a tournament. But
Ancient Tomb to start us off.
we could see the turn 2 morph.
Yeah.
Attunement.
No. Attunement. Okay.
Less exciting.
I actually just have a finite amount of magic in me as I get older. Like when I was young, like, yeah, I want to fit as much magic in a day as I could. And I get to these times now at the end of we're talking 6 to 8 rounds at tournaments. No, I don't want to play any more Magic. I don't have any bandwidth left.
All right, so the third turn from Danny is just a land pass. There's no, I guess it's kind of tough to put a threat with this mana, I guess. Yeah. He needs either double blue or double white. I guess Exalted Angel would be the other card, but that would have been played, I think, last turn.
I think you just don't run it into 3 open islands either.
I mean, it depends. If you've drawn 3 clunky enchantments, then you just start casting them. But yeah, if your hand is a little bit more leaner and you're trying to find the turn where you're trying to put multiple threats, then yeah, you don't want to just run out one. So we are on Danny's turn. He's trying to figure out what he wants to do with this mana. He's going to opt for the morph. All right. So no second white mana available currently, but obviously that's not something that Rich can control.
Feels like he could have, it gets countered, but it feels like he could have attunemented into it very easily on the next turn.
I guess Danny's biggest decision of if he ever has a turn where he's not deploying a threat, he's got to always decide, is it better to try and cash in this attunement to use that time to try and present. But I mean, if Rich goes, I mean, he's only played one counterspell. He's played 2 card filtering spells. It's very likely, I guess Danny's going to try and set up where he's going threat every turn if he's going to go for that game plan. He went for the Exalted Angel, but doesn't really have a follow-up. He just has some Tsabo's webs. So.
Try to set it up where you run him out of resources. Still, no Orim's chance. I imagine he has to have him in, but
I agree.
We have not seen any. And there's been no reason for him this game to play one. He's not had a must counter spell.
All right, we're going to activate this attunement. We're going to go dig in.
He's got enough cards in hand. He's probably got some things that he's not as excited about having at this point.
Chat's asked me if I'm into Pokemon TCG Pocket, and yes, I've been playing a lot. So I started on launch, and so I'm just a free to play player, but I've been enjoying it. I was talking about this when Tom was on. The Pokemon company released a phone app. It's like a watered down version of the trading card game that's like meant for mobile, and so it's been fun toying around with it. So.
Mike, are you a Spike Colony listener? Did you listen to the most?
I haven't listened to the most. Well, I guess I feel like I don't think I've listened to the most recent one. I don't feel like I've listened to one in a while.
Or All Things. It was a crossover episode. So
I think I'm behind on All Things, but I usually am. Yeah, I'm frequently listening. So
there was some discussion about Balatro, which is my phone game obsession.
I haven't even heard of that. What is that?
Oh, it's a roguelike poker game.
Okay.
It's really, really incredible. Highly recommend Balatro.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got some love in the chat for Balatro. I imagine you are the sort of person like me who would love that game.
Okay, so discards from Attunement are Attunement, Parallax Wave, Parallax Tide, and a City of Traitors. And then we have I don't know if it's the same Attunement or a backup Attunement, but another one's going to come down.
Yep.
So is Balatro on your phone, or is it like on the Switch, or was it?
It's on everything. Okay. So it's PC, phone. The phone port is very good. It works very well on the phone, but it will ruin your professional life. So careful. If there's anybody from work watching this, I definitely am not playing that on my phone. That's not what you see me doing on my phone every day.
I will say with the Pokemon TCG Pocket, like, I don't know if it'll change, but it's not like they've kept it like it's very nice to feel like a casual player. Like you don't have to invest a ton of time. So
that is an amazing Vision Charm.
Vision Charm gets a Wave, a Tide, an Angel, and an Adarkar Wastes.
Yeah, feels real good. You got to be happy with that. Yeah, I have to exercise a lot of restraint with Balatro. I'm better at it than I joke about, but it's definitely tempting.
Is it like, when did it come out? I would say I don't even know if I've ever heard of it.
I actually don't know when it came out. I had friends who told me about it recently.
Okay.
Oh, February apparently it
Okay.
came out. I just found it. Okay, so we do have Orim's Chant. Orim's Chant
Potentially
with
going
4
for a big
mana
turn
up.
here.
So replenish from here because we've got white, blue, 2 colorless.
And the nice thing about this card, and especially in this matchup, is let's say this Orim's Chant gets countered. Danny doesn't need to commit a replenish.
No.
He can wait for another turn where, let's say, he draws a new Orim's Chant, or he's able to get to 8 mana and is able to play 2 threats in one turn. And so Orim's Chant here is really nice.
Yep.
Does get countered. He's going to draw some extra cards with Attunement. He might be going for...
He might be going for that extra planes,
yeah,
or basically any mana source at this point.
and then have another Orim's Chant kind of thing.
Yeah. A lot of love for Balatro. I feel like there's a huge crossover. If you like Magic, you're probably going to like Balatro. Sorry, not to take away from what we're seeing, but we have a little bit of time while we're deciding. Okay. So we've got the Opalescence in there as well. And he plays his land out and then goes for the replenish.
Oh, just playing around Daze.
Daze.
We have...
Do you pay the 1?
Danny says, yes, I will pay the 1.
I bet he does. Yeah.
It might be some miscommunication of... But... Alright, so instead of casting the Daze, it looks like Gush is going to get cast.
Counter. And...
Alright, so... Counterspell was on top. We knew that because... Do we know that from a Portent? Was it that recent? I mean, like, Rich flipped it off the top, so...
Yeah.
I think he knew it from a Portent.
Slam an Opalescence.
All right.
Get it annulled. Next turn. Just keep throwing threats.
Yeah, that's, I think, Danny's best game plan, but it's kind of at the mercy of the top of his deck of if he's able to string together threat after threat after threat. All right, well, 4 mana's tapped. That's the start. Parallax Wave. Probably the worst threat. I mean, it doesn't really do anything on its own. I guess the biggest advantage with this is like Opalescence. But
yeah, he's not going for a Dreadnought. I am willing to wager he sideboarded all the Dreadnoughts out.
I think it is very possible that there are 1 to 2 copies of a Dreadnought in the deck, but I wouldn't be surprised if all of them are out, but I wouldn't be surprised if there still are some copies in.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were some, but I'd be willing to bet. Not to tip my hand for anybody playing against me. There's definitely still Dreadnoughts in my deck. Don't you dare. But no, I would probably take out the Dreadnoughts in this matchup. He's got so many more answers to Dreadnought than anything else.
Mm-hmm. We suspect. I mean, if all the swords go out, then maybe it becomes a little bit more.
I think
tempting.
a chunk of this. I think most of the swords are gone too. Probably all the swords. But he's still got waves and seals. Okay, so Tide.
Tide plus Chain of Vapor.
Oh, all right. Now I've got all the time in the world to do whatever game plan I feel like. Nice wave, though.
Yeah, definitely a miserable feeling, I think, from Danny that...
Yeah, I think Danny just did the handshake.
Yep, he recognizes that while this game may physically go on for a number of turns, it is pretty much a lost cause.
Oh yeah, this was a gracious scoop.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm gonna jump down. Maybe we can listen to our players. Find the scene.
Yep, and we have unmuted you as well.
I have unmuted you as well.
That was quite a match.
You guys are. I was loving that. That was really fun to watch.
Thanks.
I'm glad. Yeah, Danny, fantastic match. That was really good. The game ones were incredibly close. The anticlimactic mull to 5 for the last game was probably not what the viewers wanted.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain, but I think I want to keep every hand. Like, card advantage is so important.
Mhm.
And I think I milled to 5 two times and to 6 2 times. So I haven't kept a 7, right? Oh, well.
Yeah, you mulled to 5 twice.
I think you kept 1-7, and we were very excited for you.
One 7. It's fine. It's fine.
I think I noted like, oh, good for him. He finally got to keep a hit.
Yeah.
So I'll say it is really daunting when like a tide comes down and then it gets Chain of Vapor, because it just means that there's a tide looming again in the future. It's way different than like using a seal cleansing on it.
Yeah, agreed. It's a really broken combo. I mean, what Vraska did, what David did with this build is just really clever.
It's
really
good.
Adding these into the sideboard just it breaks a lot of things, and maybe not in the healthiest way, but it just opens up this whole other dimension to the deck.
Sure.
Yeah,
the enchantments were
couldn't agree more.
definitely never meant to use the stack the way they do.
Agreed. In fact, I remember being told at the Nemesis pre-release that they had errated the card. So it was literally at the pre-release where we got that.
Let's see if I can. I don't want to look at your dreadnoughts, Rich. Come on, put that away.
So it was all.
Compare.
Was it all 4 out?
Unplayable.
Yeah.
All 4 out. I almost never do that. I just looking at Danny's, and I wouldn't even normally do this in a Dreadnought match. If I were playing against mine, I would leave a Dreadnought in. But just looking at Danny's 75, he couldn't even accidentally cut all of his swords. So he's sort of priced into being ready for Dreadnoughts no matter what I do.
Yeah.
And I really like Brain Freeze. That's, I think Vraska's list is really good, but the one change I made to it really was getting a Brain Freeze in.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, I think the right number is closer to 2 than to 0. I might get a second copy in if I play this deck again, but
what did you cut out of the sideboard? Did you cut the other Flash of Insight?
No, I love Flash. I actually cut a Daze in the main, and then I took the second Misdirection that was in the sideboard, shoved it in the main, and then that opened up the slot for Brain Freeze. So I cut a Daze.
Yeah, and I think it's cool to have open deck lists, but knowing what the other have, like I don't play mana leaks, right? Like that's the big difference between other. And if you know that I don't have mana leaks, I just play the consistent build, is how I called it. And you know there's going to be angels maybe. It's a whole other difference than than normally. I think when I played this matchup, nobody puts 4 dreadnoughts out of the deck, so sometimes 2 or 1, just to make sure you can still go turn 3 combo with counterspell backup or Daze backup or whatever. Yeah.
I would have boarded differently if these were not open deck lists.
Yeah, honestly,
yeah, it hurts me a bit. It hurts me a bit, but it's for the viewers. It's perfectly fine, of course, right? Because you want to know what we're looking for. So yeah,
I think everybody got to know your game plan. Obviously, Rich is a master of what he's doing, but knowing that you just essentially didn't have any interaction meant a lot of these stacks were really almost foregone conclusions.
Yeah. I mean,
but still, I managed to get 1 replenish through in game 1, right? So I think
honestly, you made it a hell of a match.
Yeah.
you were
4 turns in a row. I did the things timing and making sure, and then I noticed maybe Rich has like a Stifle, so I just have like
you
4
played
mana,
that
4
so well.
force.
I would have been so excited to stifle the return trigger. The less people wizard, it would have been great, entertaining viewing for everyone except you. But you played the whole match really well.
Yeah, after sideboarding, this matchup for me becomes just jamming everything into you. Like no questions asked. Like only chance sometimes makes it differently, but because you have Tide, and that's the whole thing I think is very dangerous, because you have Tide, I cannot just wait like game 1, right? And game 2. Because then I just wait and wait and wait. All your days become worthless, and you cannot go Dreadnought. So I can sculpt my hand way more. In game, like after sideboarding, it becomes so much about you also having tides, and then it's way harder. Then I just jam and hope you don't have it. Well, jam, hope you don't have it. Looking at your list, it's not the way how I want to play.
Sure.
versus control deck, right?
Game 1, I can't actually hurt you on my turn. I actually can't win. I have to either get down a Dreadnought and fight through. You have so many ways to remove it, though.
Yeah.
And when you go off, you go over the top of Dreadnought. So even if I get a Dreadnought out, you could just ignore him and actually just enact your combo, and that beats a Dreadnought. So I'm kind of stuck playing this control role. But because I have no threat, I'm kind of a pure control deck. That changes after sideboarding. Like you said, now I have this whole other role that I can play, so I can shift gears very quickly, which is actually what I like about Replenish. But being able to shift gears gives me the ability to play control until I'm done playing control, and then I can just end the game.
Yeah. Well, for instance, game 3, I kind of had really good cards in my hand. And I think you did like 5 lands away, and then I still was in the game, right? So
right, yeah, you were.
It was only the 5 next lands were like, then it becomes a little bit harder, right?
Yes. I think if I had 2 brain freezes in my 75, I could present that as a better threat. With 2 brain freezes, I think I could try to go into combo mode more
makes
quickly,
sense. Yeah.
but it's kind of tough to do that with 1 copy.
I think it's not needed. Maybe if my list was a little bit more geared up to control, right? So if I factor fictions and mana leaks, then the second one becomes more useful.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Maybe in the mirror, it's also quite okay to brain freeze. But I think 1 copy is actually excellent because you have Flash of Insight, so you can just you flash for 17 there.
Yes.
If you would miss there, it would be like also great, right? So Flash of Insight for 17. Oh, no counterspell. Let's go to game 4.
That's true. That would be I could have missed on that. I mean, that was not a deterministic Flash of Insight.
No, but 17 is quite.
The game was over.
Yeah, but going for Flash of Insight for 17, I was not in the. I did my Hail Marys, but 17 is a bit. Okay.
The odds were in my favor that I would find a
The odds were
but
ever be in your favor. Yeah. True that. I really like the pre-board match because then you have like an actual back and forth thinking.
Yeah.
Like my brain just shuts off in game 3, 4, and 5. I'm sorry. I'm just, oh, I have a card I can play. I can play the card. I'll play
If
the
you have
card.
mana leaks, you get a whole different view of the matchup.
Yeah.
I know. I tested mana leaks, but then my matchup against red and green decks are becoming infinitely worse. So I'm really loving the 4 Opalescence, 4 waves.
That's
I'm not sure.
fair. Yeah, I mean, I keep going back and forth between 3 and 4 copies of Wave, Tide, and Opal. They're great. I don't know what the right number. To this day, it's either 3 or 4. Maybe that's metagame dependent. I
think trying to fit in the mana leaks and also a factor fiction or two. Factor fiction's been surprisingly good in that deck.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm on no fact main, 2 fact in the board, and it's just been phenomenal.
I think every time I've landed a factor fiction, every time I made somebody split a factor fiction, I've won the game.
Yes, it's really good. Now it's another 4-drop in the 4-drop theme deck, and that's
right. But I mean, you just wound up in this match where you guys were trading resources so aggressively.
Yeah.
Just like, you got an answer to this one? Okay, next.
Yeah, the factor fiction on your end step, and then I'm gonna untap and just throw a bunch of questions at you and see if you can answer them. That's
I agree. I'm already playing 12 4-drops. I didn't want to play 14 or 15 4-drops.
4-drop tribal.
Yeah, that's really what it is. That's what this deck is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, of course. But like if I play Factor Fiction, then Manly becomes way better. So then the whole deck
you would definitely not play Factor Fiction without Mana Leak. It just gets so much better when you combine them.
Yeah, exactly. I had deep analysis in my sideboard a long time because I knew it was good in the long run. But yeah, then again, I play a lot against elves and goblins and Sly. I also in this 10-round tournament I played against Sly, and then like four Opalescence are really needed in that matchup to make sure you can actually win the game.
Sly is a rough matchup.
Yeah, it can be rough. I think my list is the better geared up against Sly list.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah,
I agree. My list is, I mean, I think Sly is unfavorable for me.
I think as a Sly pilot, I never want to see Mana Leak on the other side, though, just because I'm trying to land Price of Progress.
That's true.
That's also fair. Yeah.
Into the game.
But most of the time you can tide your own lands, but that's borderline.
You're already at a point where you have an active Tide going, sure, but that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's also a challenge.
Yeah, I'm just desperate. Thinking about it from the Sly side, I'm just so desperate to kill you because you're so much more broken of a deck than I am.
Oh yeah.
I just have to keep you from doing the thing.
Right, but you can. I mean, Sly can race you. I've definitely lost to it before. And
it's going to take a Price of Progress, though.
Yeah, a Price of Progress it's so good.
Yeah. Indeed. I think like this tournament, I really love my 4 angels. I'm never going to leave without 4 angels in the sideboard. I've had so many discussions with Anton. Anton Glans is a guy that I talk a lot with, and he just completely hates the card. So we always get into but you play the same deck as me. How can you play it so differently?
I agree. I would not want to play Angel in this deck. Angel is not appealing to me at all in this deck because I think the main plan is so good, but she is a must counter in this matchup.
Yeah,
I actually have to counter her.
It mattered here every time.
Yeah. Yes. I either have to counter her or find a Chain of Vapor, or I guess mill you out very quickly.
As soon as we started talking about sideboard, it's like, well, those are an auto include just to play something to the board that can close it. You're the beatdown.
Huge. I have X counters. Danny has X threats. Game 1, I have 8 hard counters. Danny has 8 cards without which he cannot win.
Yeah.
Now, if he plays them before I get mine, obviously he wins. But it really is. I have the exact number of counters to line up. After sideboarding, Angel is another set of cards that I need to counter or I can't win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. In game one, I was looking for tides, so I drew up I had 2 intuitions, right? So
right, and you
then like so intuition, and I was like, okay, let's get me just 3 lands, and then another one top deck intuition. I was like, okay, that's another 3 lands, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, finally a threat that doesn't cost 4.
Yes, it's true. It's theoretically a threat at 3. And Danny, I think you were definitely right to bring in the webs. I cut out the factories because of web. I would have left them in otherwise.
Yeah, I think game 4 I was on 3 life. I did myself hurt a number of times, and factory is also just a silent threat. So if you go factory, I have like a clock on me, and then. But again, after sideboard, you have like 3 tides, and you have so many search for it. So the whole matchup resolves differently. And like I said, I find it a bit dangerous because the deck is already pretty consistent, and the sideboard tactic that David found was really, really, really good. So when I play that deck, I also feel it's really, really, really powerful. I love Replenish way more because the tricks and everything around it. But
me too. I think Replenish is more fun. They're both a lot of fun. I think Replenish is more fun. I just needed a break from it. But
yeah, makes sense. I'm also taking a break for the Replenish part. So next monthly, I'm not playing Replenish.
Yes, I still have a couple of matches left, so I won't say that I'm not on Replenish.
Makes sense. No, but like I'm also playing Replenish for 6 months, so it's kind of funny that everybody on the Replenish side is having way different lists, and it's just really funny how everybody plays it a little bit differently.
Yeah,
that's kind of funny.
It's weird to me, how many monthlies do I have to win before someone copies my 75? It hasn't actually happened yet.
Or maybe the people that have copied it just haven't done well. Maybe that's the case.
That's also true. Maybe
I mean, and that's not a dig at you. It's just maybe.
No, I know.
Yeah.
No, got him.
But yeah.
That was definitely a dig.
No, I just
subtle shade from the Midwest nice.
No, it's just your game plan is just maybe not being able to be executed by other people.
You're saying I'm so good at Magic, I can horribly misbuild my deck.
I don't think it's a misbuild. I think it's just like a preference. I think there's enough.
Finally, somebody said it, Rich. I'm really happy that somebody just said it, because that's just so true. It's so true.
What can I say? I'm a terrible deck builder. Yeah. I've just been really lucky.
It's just all skill and luck. Yeah, that's basically what it is.
All right, I think we'll wrap things up very shortly. So if you guys want to add anything before we're heading out.
Well, thanks for running this, Aaron. Thanks for joining us for commentary for 2 hours and 45 minutes out of your Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. So fun to watch, you guys. Thanks for putting on the show.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks again for organizing this as well. And Rich, good luck in the finals. I was hoping to make it a European final instead of the 6 Americans, but now Rich, you have to take it home. So I can say I lost to the guy that wins everything. So
I will do what I can. I don't know what I'm facing yet. If it's Replenish, I'm really, really motivated to win, because I don't want Replenish to get banned. So.
Oh, it'll be tied if anything gets banned.
Well, I can't help
that. You can ban Replenish, but there's like a 4-mana blue enchantment. It's a little bit more powerful.
Martin Berlin will just see what I'm playing and ban it. It doesn't matter.
Okay, then I hope you're going to play Goblin Lackey next tournament. Rich.
Yeah, I would say, Rich, maybe it's time to whip out that Stompy deck, take it out of the garage.
Get out of here.
Try and get some of those green cards banned. But yeah, all right. Thank you, players. I think we'll call it on that note. But yeah, thanks for a great match. Yeah, thank you, Aaron, for jumping in the booth.
Anytime.
Had a great time, but that was a great match. I think all the players did really well. But
incredible.
Just want to say thank you for everyone who's able to tune in. Had a lot of fun doing this. But we'll call it here. Again, some people are asking about the other semifinals. I think we're looking to play that tomorrow. I'll have some notes once we finalize details of when that will be streamed. But until next time, thank you and take care.
Have a good one, everybody.
Have a good one.